The Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, KIPPRA, was established as a public institute under the provisions of the State Corporations Act through legal notice number 56 of the Kenya Gazette of 9th May 1997.
I took the first letter to OP. It was not approved. He gave me the second letter. It was not approved. He gave me the third letter. I took it to OP and it was approved. That's how KIPPRA started.
Then in 1997, when the legal notice was put, the key mandate of KIPPRA was to ensure that they can deliver on quality, objective policy research and analysis that would support the policy making process.
KIPPRA started operations from the 7th floor of the Treasury building, where its macroeconomics division offices are still housed.
Hiyo wakati tulianzia kwa jengo la Treasury building, tulikuwa ghorofa ya 7, mlango namba 719.
This is a umbilical cord that joins KIPPRA, the Ministry of Devolution and Planning, and the National Treasury.
Macroeconomic division is based here in Treasury building. We have 2 offices here, each with a set of 3 rooms. These are room 719 and then room 723. So we have those 2 offices.
The non-official board members were named in a Gazette notice number 582 of 13th February 1998, with the first board chaired by Professor Francis Gishaga.
For example, we were a group of people, many of them from the public sector. We also had people from the private sector. We missed what I would call the mentors, the people who would have mentored us. They were, I couldn't see them. Most of the people in, say, in the government were very suspicious of this animal called KIPPRA. And the person who was recruited to be our chief executive officer, he was coming from University of Connecticut in the USA, and Professor Mwagi Kemenyi was his name, the late. And he was very, I would say, very industrious in trying to see how KIPPRA can come up to be accepted by people, particularly leaders in the government. Because there are those who are suspecting that this is like an animal coming to find out how policies are worked on and so on. And I'm happy to say that the early years, while we were working out, we eventually were able to bring a lot of those people who are very suspicious of us to be on our side. And I remember one minister who was going for an international conference on trade, and we gave him some guide notes. When he came back, he was very happy. He thanked us because he found that, in fact, KIPPRA can help in providing information on the plans that we have.
The first board, which was officially inaugurated by the late Professor George Saitoti, then Minister for Planning and National Development, held its first meeting on 18th March 1998.
Professor Kimenyi was a very good friend of Professor Saitoti, who also played a huge role in formulating this institution.
KIPPRA formally commenced operations in June 1999 when the first executive director, Professor Mwangi Kimenyi, joined the institute.
The position of the executive director was advertised. So the writer and the founder of KIPPRA also applied. Professor Mwangi Kimenyi was our first director, also applied, and another gentleman. So Professor Mwangi Kimenyi was the one who passed the interview.
And when the first executive director, the late Professor Mwangi Kimenyi, came on board, KIPPRA officially opened its doors in June 1999.
The initial idea of establishing a public policy research institute for Kenya had been there since the early 1980s, when the government appreciated the need to expand analytical capacity within the government to support evidence-based policy making.
A key element that the government was looking at is how can we strengthen the capacity of the public service in the policy making process. And since the economy was also going through a lot in terms of structural adjustment programs, you remember those ones of the IMF, the government was like, we are in a different era. We cannot just assume. We need to be well informed, well grounded as we do our policy.
So one of the other issues that KIPPRA started, on the umbrella project started talking about was actually the whole issue of better regulation.
So the thinking of a think tank really was to play that key role, that you cannot do good policy for development agenda without policy research and analysis.
The umbrella project actually was anchored in 3 pillars. The first pillar, which was actually the bigger pillar, was one of the strengthening the regulatory environment for doing business. We used to call it SRIB. So it was actually research-based, and it was the forte of KIPPRA. You know, the researchers here would do research work on different things that impact negatively on business, and especially the regulatory environment. The next one was actually the private sector itself. A private sector needed to form a lobby in which they could articulate their issues to government. Now, this lobby, it was agreed by all stakeholders, needed to be organized, it needed to be collective, it also needed to be based on reason.
Although there were several agencies and organizations carrying out socio-economic and political research in Kenya at the time KIPPRA was set up, there were very few think tanks in the country, and those that were existing did not enjoy the benefit of direct link with the government.
At its foundation, there were so many research institutions, just like they are there now. Private sector, NGOs, all of them were doing research. But there was one thing that was missing, which KIPPRA was coming to fill in. None of them was actually working directly with the government. So KIPPRA stands a very unique position. The fact that it's a public think tank makes it interact directly with all government agencies, with all government departments, and with all levels in the government. there are very few institutions. In fact, there's none other in Kenya that does research and feeds it directly to the government system.
Secondly, there were many consulting firms that served a highly fragmented market and were quite small in scope and operations. Moreover, national research institutes and universities were engaged in highly technical scientific work without specific focus on policy formulation and development. Finally, there was a conglomeration of various types of NGOs generating information without the necessary analytical rigor.
But at the same time, being entrenched in the government system, KIPPRA has a level of independence in the sense that when we prepare our work plan, which we derive from the strategic plan, we always ensure that we are within the bigger government agenda. The Vision 2030, the medium-term plans, we hedge against these frameworks. Yeah? KIPPRA is broad. It not only looks at issues of macroeconomic stability, but it also looks at issues of enhancing productivity in agriculture, and it moves on to talk about how you can promote the private sector development, and also how you can actually promote trade between Kenya and the international community. So in that in itself is a wide scope that KIPPRA has managed to capture in the market, and which will take a while for even the think tanks that are coming up to actually compete with it.
It was on this premise that KIPPRA hit the ground running. The year 2006 marked an important milestone when KIPPRA Act No. 15 of 2006 was enacted.
So the good thing is that after the legal notice, of course, you find that we were able to get more entrenched with our legal framework. Yeah? When we got our KIPPRA Act in 2006, and this itself gave us more force and entrenched us more deeply into the government system, yeah? Because it means that in as much as we have our parent ministry, the fact that we have even our budget line in itself tells you that we have a space to occupy in the government system.
We look at the growth issues, both quarter and annual, and now basically we're now moving on to inclusive growth, to see how inclusive the growth for Kenya is, how at least everybody can be uplifted. The other thematic area is fiscal policy analysis. Fiscal policies, here we deal with the issues of revenues, expenditures, deficit and debt issues, the financing aspect. That's the budget actually, that's the main area for the fiscal policy analysis. And therefore the fiscal stability is a key issue that we also try to look at and address in this division. The other thematic area we have is monetary policy analysis, whereby we discuss monetary issues, particularly the issues of inflation, interest rates, money supply and exchange rates. All those are discussed in that thematic area.
This legislation was essential in assuring KIPPRA's long-term sustainability in pursuit of the vision of becoming an international center of excellence in public policy research and analysis.
KIPPRA, with that unique contribution direct to the government, not only from the research we do, but also from the interaction we do with the private sector. We are able to gather information, we are able to gather relevant policy issues that are really of concern to them, and to share the platform together, so that the private sector, government, other research institutions can come together and they can talk together in deliberating on the policy issues.
President Mwai Kibaki signed the KIPPRA bill into law on 1st January 2007, thereby concluding a process that the Institute, supported by the Ministry of Planning and National Development, had started several years earlier.
We have a macro model referred to as KIPPRA Treasury macro model that is normally used for forecasting and also policy simulation analysis. And we also have a social accounting matrix that we use now to analyze the sectoral issues of economic growth. So basically, that's what we do as macro, and that's how we contribute in the KIPPRA objective of advising the government on public policy issues.
Early achievements of KIPPRA.
It is 20 years, so that in itself is an indication that the institution has managed to grow and has also managed to sort of mature in terms of delivering its mandate as defined in the KIPPRA Act 2006.
Development of economic blueprints. KIPPRA has been supporting the government in preparation of key economic blueprints. In its early years, the Institute provided technical support in the development of the Poverty Reduction Strategy Paper, the 9th National Development Plan, and the Kenya Rural Development Strategy. The Institute was also involved in international trade negotiations and regional integration issues. Thereafter, the Institute played key roles in development of the Economic Recovery Strategy for Wealth and Employment Creation (ERS), Vision 2030 and its medium-term plans, and various sectorial policies.
We got into areas which were particularly interesting at that time, for example, poverty. So we worked on areas of poverty. And one area where I recall with a lot of excitement was about introducing a primary education which was free.
Every year, KIPPRA staff participate in over 20 government task forces and technical working groups.
We normally participate in various government forums. Yeah? One of them is we get commissioned work from government. Yeah? Like recently, we got some work to do with regard to the national values and principles. And we have actually one of our special reports is focused on that. But if you go to one of the gazettements recently, a gazette notice, you'll find some policy proposals that have been put together. And if you look at that and what we had given, it's a clear reflection of the quality of work that we do, that even a commission can actually take it up and say, no, we agree with what you have given us and we are moving forward. Even to gazette it, it was one of the things that we actually celebrated in KIPPRA.
The development of the KIPPRA Treasury Macroeconomic Model KTMM in 2001-2002 was a key milestone. This was a joint initiative by staff of KIPPRA and then Ministry of Finance and Planning. The KTMM is used for macroeconomic analysis to provide economic forecasts underpinning the medium-term expenditure framework MTEF.
Another area which I remember with nostalgia is that of developing what we call the macroeconomic model for Kenya, which was being used for purposes of policy planning and this kind of thing.
The macro model that we have here is called KIPPRA Treasury Macro Model. Why the name is because it was a joint effort between KIPPRA and Treasury to construct the model. This model is an econometric model which was based on time series data for estimation of coefficients. And this model mainly the purpose is to do forecasting. This forecasting is to look at the economic indicators, particularly growth, and then find out, given the prevailing circumstances and a number of assumptions, what do you expect as growth for Kenya in the next 3 to 5 years.
Incubation of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance KEPSA. KIPPRA was instrumental in incubating the Kenya Private Sector Alliance KEPSA, previously known as the Private Sector Forum.
The new thinking came that actually this private sector forum needed to be reorganized. It needed to have gravitas. It also needed to be totally inclusive of private sector. Because you admit it, the informal sector is like Juakali association was not in the forum. Yet the informal sector forms a very important plank of our economy. So, and also the way they were articulating their issues, was, they just go talk about issues without facts, without, backed by knowledge. So it was, KIPPRA took upon itself to bring together all those private sector associations and forums into one umbrella called KIPPRA, including initially providing even office space for KIPPRA, recruitment of staff, organizing their strategic plan, and all that.
The strengthening of KIPPRA was important to provide a forum for the private sector to engage with the government and play a more active role in national development by articulating and advocating for policy implementation from a more evidence-based perspective.
KIPPRA, when it was being formed, KIPPRA played a very major role at the very foundation when nobody knew how to bring together the private sector and to talk to the government as one voice. There was a private sector forum, but there were so many other small forums. There was no leadership. So KIPPRA, in a project that was being funded by DFID, deregulation, looking at the deregulation and therefore how to improve the business environment, was able to talk to private sector and tell them, even when you lobby the government for policy, you must be well informed. So please, also prepare yourself better when you go to talk to the government. But at the same time, have one voice. Not today, this one goes, the next time this one goes. At the end of the day, your needs and the needs of private sector, they are very different.
Through collaboration with KIPPRA, KIPPRA was able to participate in the agenda for improving the enabling environment for business in Kenya, which led to improved policy, legal, and regulatory environment for business.
I would say that we have come very far from with KIPPRA, and we are hoping that we can continue the journey together. But we also don't neglect the others, even at individual level. So we still work with them because they need different support at different times.
In 2001, the Institute won the prestigious 2001 Outstanding Research on Development Award by the Global Development Network (GDN), thus demonstrating its standing as an international center of excellence. The competition included long-established research institutes and universities from over 70 countries. In 2003, KIPPRA launched the Young Professionals Training Program, which aims to enhance technical competence in policy analysis capacity for both public and private professionals.
We have our Young Professional Program, which we bring both officers from the private sector and also the government. Yeah? They come and they spend 1 year. This team, if you start talking to them, they will tell you, some of them, just a certificate that I got from KIPPRA. I've managed to use it as a springboard for something else. The certificate I got, I was able to use it to get even a different job. The certificate I got, I was able to get it to get a promotion in the place of work. So it has taken me far. Others will say, when I went for an interview and they saw that I spent some time in KIPPRA, it's like the icon. And they're like, okay, now we understand. Okay? So we can give you, we are confident that you know what you're talking about. So that in itself gives us a picture that we are making a difference.
I spent the better part of my working life at KIPPRA, 11, 12 years at KIPPRA. And there are many things I learned as a policy analyst. When I crossed over to the mainstream public service, there are very many important tools that I took away from KIPPRA that helped me in my work, but also there are very important lessons that one learns when they are working on the other side. Quickly after doing the PhD, looking for work, and I go to
for an interview with the way I realized that it was not one of the most easiest institutions to join. But we don't occasionally throw in the KIPPRA card. You know, when I was doing policy research work, I remember because they want you to demonstrate that you know how to do policy research work and think critically. And I could see the gentleman nodding because they knew about it. So as soon as I mentioned KIPPRA, you could see the excitement in the interview panel. This seems to a guy you can do business.
When the advert came, I applied, and lucky I was one of the selected graduates to join young professionals, the macroeconomics division of KIPPRA. And I can tell you it was an achievement for me because I didn't feel that my master's was enough. Because I had seen, before even I had seen the content, and I had been able to want to be that person who, you know, will go through KIPPRA and be able to be taken through, you know, training on public policy, training on, you know, econometrics, training on macroeconomics or the economy, because I'm a lover of the public sector. And what I wanted is to perfect the art of policy making, which I had already started at the Ministry of Trade when I was an economist deployed from the Ministry of Planning. So, as you can see, my journey to KIPPRA was very exciting, and I was so lucky, and I think the young professional program is the best, and that was the defining moment for my career. I remember what I always wanted as a young public servant. I always wanted to go to the top, and I had given myself a target, and I knew to achieve that target, I had to go through this kind of training. So what I did is, after KIPPRA, I started setting my eye to, you know, running up to the highest level of policy making in terms of, you know, leadership in government.
Since its establishment, the program has graduated over 110 policy analysts, many of them now playing a key role in policy formulation in government ministries, departments, and agencies.
There's one lady now, she went to Central Bank, but she's been seconded to that group of advisors for the president. Yeah, she's called Ann Kamau. She is doing a good job. She started from here. Aile Karibula, who is also an advisor of the president, also started from here. Joe Kim, who is heading his team that is looking at reforms for the coffee industry, is also a KIPPRA person. So we have so many that we can talk about.
Kenya Economic Report. Since 2009, KIPPRA has been producing the flagship Kenya Economic Report annually to provide an in-depth analysis of the Kenyan economy and prospects for the next 3 years.
The report reveals the gains, the opportunities, and also the challenges therein when we come to regional economic integration. And the coverage in that case, several sectors have been covered. Trade as the first one, agriculture and food security, industry, infrastructure, labor, and governance have all been covered in the report.
The report has become an invaluable source of analysis on the state of Kenya's economy. Since inception, the institute has produced several public policy outputs.
KIPPRA staff have participated in many international forums, either in form of presenting papers or discussion panels and all this, the UN forums and all this, and they find that in the future, KIPPRA is going to make very strong steps. It's going to kind of make Africa have its own homegrown policies, its own researchers that are giving the home-based policy prescriptions that actually work, rather than just taking any foreign policy and then implement just like that. It will be having policies done by the people of the same country, the citizen, done and implemented, and we find they're achieving results.
KIPPRA attained its ISO certification in 2010, has been certified under the Quality Management System ISO 9001-2008, and is in the process of transitioning to ISO 9001-2015. In 2014, the Global Go-To Think Tank survey ranked KIPPRA as the best think tank in sub-Saharan Africa. In 2015, KIPPRA was again ranked the top think tank in sub-Saharan Africa, second year in a row, the Global Go-To Think Tank report globally identifies and ranks more than 6,000 think tanks from across the world that excel in research, analysis, and public engagement on a wide range of policy issues.
KIPPRA being number one in sub-Saharan Africa, the go-to think tanks.
In the last 20 years also, we have seen KIPPRA move at the international level and become among the top in the sub-Saharan Africa.
It shows that the years that are coming, KIPPRA will also be recognized in the world. Over and above sub-Saharan Africa, even in the world, we find KIPPRA being recognized out there.
Since inception, KIPPRA has received financial support from the Government of Kenya and various development partners, including the European Commission, USAID, African Capacity Building Foundation, UK Department for International Development, and the International Development Research Centre of Canada, among others.
We are very happy at the moment that the government actually has sustained us financially. We get almost over 60% of our budget from the government. At the moment, we are putting together a resource mobilization strategy because we would want to see some level of financial independence in the sense that you can fill even all your positions without worrying that, do I have to go to the government today to start saying, we need more additions of funds. If we can balance it in a manner that we can generate even our own income and reduce the funding that we are getting from the government, I think it would push this institution to a different level in terms of independence, financial independence.
KIPPRA has also widened its network to include collaborations with the African Economic Research Consortium, World Bank, Brookings Institution, UNICEF, as well as various government ministries and departments.
There are situations where my staff would say, we are getting competition. Every department in the government is actually setting up their own small think tank. And I remind them that if KIPPRA, which has been there, has made an impact, the only way you can measure that impact for people to understand the need for evidence-based policy process is by the small research institutions, small think tanks they are starting. But the good thing is that they are not starting it from a very big scope like we have in KIPPRA. They are kind of to us like smaller institutions which can help in deepening maybe what we cannot deepen as we do it at KIPPRA, but also allowing us to have more element of interaction and collaboration.
KIPPRA remains committed to providing evidence-based policy analysis and will continue investing resources to enhance the quality of its research, expand policy engagement with the government, and enhance the capacity of the government in policy formulation.
KIPPRA has already achieved as far as sub-Saharan Africa is concerned. But sub-Saharan Africa is only made up of about 50 countries, right? We would want to get to the global scenario, and we would want to find ourselves being compared with the best institutions or think tanks in other regions. So in the next decade, we want to work towards getting out of sub-Saharan Africa and ensuring that we can strengthen our networks outside sub-Saharan Africa and be able to work closely with institutions like KIPPRA had started a very good collaboration with Brookings Institute. We still have something small still going on, but we would want to strengthen those linkages, so that we can get the global picture and we can also be felt globally in terms of the contribution we make. The first time I listened to Wangari Maathai, she was talking about the hummingbird and how it would go, it's a very tiny bird, but it was trying to make its contribution to put off fire in a forest. And the first time I listened to that, I was like, what actually is the message that she's sending? And when I look at KIPPRA, I would say that we are actually doing our role. We can be that hummingbird because this is a very big economy. This is a very big global market, yeah? But the small that we are making, I think is making a contribution, and we should be able to continue doing that.